Like, if somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring her back.
There is an overabundance of true crime stories that begin with the notion that when a family appears to be happy, balanced, and hardworking, that they are in fact an inseparable, loving, and too often referred to as a perfect family. In reality, the concept of the so-called perfect family is frequently just a fallacy mistaken by strangers, neighbors, and close friends when a family is naturally able to keep up a polished image well out in public. Humans are imperfect by nature, so these perceptions are often dismantled over time due to private issues that may become public. Things like child abuse, escalating disagreements, medical conditions, infidelity, or financial gain, as can be seen in another video on this channel, are just a handful of the many possible reasons for this. During the course of this video's 42-minute running time, we are going to attempt to meticulously analyze the details surrounding the May 2011 murder of 51-year-old Ruth Pyne in her own home. And, unironically, this is another case that begins with the ever-mentioned perfect family. On the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan, in a family-friendly area known as Highland Township, lived a Christian family of 4 known as the Pyne family. The Pyne family consisted of automotive engineer Bernie Pyne, his wife Ruth Pyne, their son Jeffrey Pyne, and young daughter Julia Pyne. Bernie and Ruth had met when the two were in high school, and initially Ruth had zero interest in Bernie, but Bernie persisted, and just 11 months after their first date, Bernie and Ruth then tied the knot and went on to have their 2 children together. Their son Jeffrey was born in 1989, and daughter Julia was born about a decade later in 2001. At the age of 21, Jeffrey had just recently graduated from the Highland Christian Academy, and during his years at the high school, he was a very popular and well-liked student who was regularly at the top of his class. Jeffrey would excel on the high school basketball team, and Jeffrey was studying pre-med with the hopes to pursue a career in the medical industry, and eventually received an offer to enter the honors program at the University of Michigan Flint campus. Jeff's little sister Julia was only 10 years old, and she already had garnered a reputation among her teachers and other parents as a bright and friendly young lady who was a very talented ballerina with a promising future. On the outside, the Pyne family appeared to encapsulate nearly every ingredient in the perfect family formula. So, what exactly happened behind the scenes that may have led up to this seemingly pointless murder? Throughout the marriage, Ruth began to suffer from several mental health issues. She would find herself excessively energetic and unable to sleep for several days, followed by several days of severe fatigue and intense sadness. These issues continued to worsen until they began to cause serious strain on the marriage, and then Bernie would plead with Ruth to visit a doctor. Eventually, with the help of her husband, Ruth sought out treatment and was diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder with psychotic features. So she was then prescribed multiple medications to help control these issues. Unfortunately, Ruth would only take her medication as prescribed for a short period of time before making the decision to stop, as she believed that all medication was a form of sorcery and she was not going to take it. Sadly, these mental issues spanned over 2 decades and only continued downhill due to Ruth's resistance to her treatment. And in 2010, during another phase of rejecting treatment, Ruth would suffer a severe psychotic break. During another serious conversation regarding medication between Bernie and Ruth, Jeff entered the room and Ruth immediately attacked him. Ruth then grabbed Jeff by the neck and began to strike him repeatedly, while Jeff refused to fight back and covered his face from Ruth. Luckily, Bernie was in the room and was able to pull Ruth from Jeff fairly quickly, and then call 911. Due to the severity of this incident, Ruth was then arrested and held for evaluation until a judge could be seen regarding her release.
I called Bernard Pyne to the stand.
I don't want her to have to take medicine either, but it just seems like when she doesn't, all kinds of bad things happen.
Ruth would then spend just over 3 weeks in jail before being released to a hospital for further care. While at the hospital, one of the doctors overseeing Ruth made the statement, "She is likely to deteriorate severely and become a danger to herself and others, due to her refusal to accept treatment for her very serious mental illness." She would then be released back to her family under the promise that she'd get back on her medication. Once released, Ruth then quickly returned to her way of rejecting medication and things became unstable at home once again. Now, Ruth believing that there is recording devices hidden throughout the home and that there were tracking devices in her bloodstream. Several months went by until the end of 2010, when Bernie eventually began to have an affair. This went on for a few months before Bernie decided that enough is enough. And in February of 2011, Bernie then approached Ruth and advised her that he will be seeking a divorce if she continues to refuse medication. Ruth took this very seriously and told Bernie that she will get on her medication again and stick to it, as the family means everything to her. Bernie agreed and the relationship continued. Ruth seemed to take her medication as prescribed, and the entire family appeared to be on the upswing. Well, they at very least appeared that way. On the afternoon of May 27, 2011, Bernie and his daughter Julia arrived at home around 2:30 p.m. They pull into the driveway, and Bernie attempts to open the garage door, which strangely appears to be stuck or not working. Bernie and Julia then decide to walk around to the back of the house to try and enter the garage through a separate door. As they walk around the corner, they can see that the back garage door appears to be left open. Bernie then notices Ruth's hand underneath the door in a strange position and pulls Julia back away from the door. Bernie then enters the garage himself and finds Ruth laying in a puddle of blood in the corner of the garage. He's able to quickly determine that Ruth is likely deceased. Bernie then immediately dials 911.
911, where's your emergency? My wife, she's like in the garage. There's blood everywhere. I don't know what's going on.
Officers are quickly dispatched to the Pyne household and arrive on the scene around 2:50 p.m. An investigation immediately begins. Investigators find that Ruth had been brutally beaten and stabbed to death. And, after quickly speaking with Bernie, investigators established that a 2x4 piece of wood was missing from the garage. Examiners then determined that the wood was likely what was used to strike Ruth 17 or more times, resulting in a cracked skull. The size and shape of the wounds appeared to match the 2x4, and Ruth was also found to have traces of wood on her arms and hands. Examiners were also able to establish that Ruth had been stabbed 16 times in the side of her neck. Despite a large amount of blood surrounding Ruth in the garage, the rest of the house appeared to be surprisingly clean. There was no items of value missing or stolen, and there were zero signs of a forced entry. The only other evidence in the home was a trace amount of Ruth's blood found on the tap of one of the sinks, which is presumed to be from somebody washing their hands. So, with a lack of a forced entry, and virtually any physical evidence at all, investigators began to wonder who may have had access to the home at the time that the murder had happened, and began to question Bernie and Jeff. Bernie would go on to explain his wife's mental instability due to her choice to resist taking medication, and how it has impacted their marriage. He would also go on to explain that Ruth would sometimes even sleep with knives in the bed because of her constant paranoia, and that she had a tendency to become physical if she refrained from taking her medication. The investigators started to put even more pressure on Bernie after he admitted to having an affair within the 6 months leading up to the murder. Fortunately for Bernie, he offered a solid alibi which was quickly corroborated by the police. Bernie was found on a video recording at a local restaurant celebrating a co-worker's retirement on the afternoon of May 27th. After almost immediately ruling out Bernie as a suspect, investigators then turned their focus onto Ruth and Bernie's son, Jeffrey. They had already determined a brief timeline for Ruth and Jeff that day, stating that Ruth had gone shopping in the morning and was caught on surveillance leaving the store and heading home around 11 a.m. And Jeff was actually at the house that morning, only leaving around 1:30 p.m. to head into work, which would mean that there was about a 2.5-hour window where Jeff and Ruth would be alone at the house. Since Ruth was found by Bernie at almost exactly 2:30 p.m. that day, this only left about an hour between the moment that Jeff had left the house and the moment that Ruth was found. So, just hours after Bernie found Ruth murdered. Investigators then bring Jeff Pyne in for questioning. Bernie had already let Jeff know that his mom had passed, but Jeff was unaware that she was murdered.
Okay. Jeff, my name is Henrik. I'm with the Sheriff's Department. Henrik, call me. Nice to meet you. We won't take too much of your time. Okay. We just got a couple questions for you. Okay. Like we explained to your dad and your sister, our goal here is to figure out what happened. Okay. Strictly figure out what happened, and we can move on from there. Okay. You're not under arrest or anything like that. Okay. How old are you? 21. 21? Yeah. Is your name Jeff or Jeffrey?
Either.
Which do you go by?
Usually Jeff.
Jeff? Okay. All right, I'll call you Jeff. What's your middle name, Jeff?
Bernard.
Bernard? And your date of birth?
December 22nd, 89.
89, okay. You live at the house there?
Yes.
Okay.
Lived there my whole life.
Okay, I was going to say, have you lived there a long time? Or?
Yeah, that's the only place I've ever lived.
Okay. Do you work?
Yes.
Where do you work?
Spice Orchards.
Oh, on Clyde Road?
Clyde and 23, yeah.
Okay. What do you do there?
Just about everything. I've been there since I was 16. I'm their unofficial winemaker. Make cider. I work the register. Pretty much anything they need.
Little bit of everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff continued to answer questions regarding his employment at Spicer Orchards. He then went on to provide officers with a new piece of crucial timeline information.
I understand you work today?
Yes, I went at 3.
At 3? Okay. Is that the only place you work? Or you work other places?
That's the only place that I'm employed right now. I also work for a lady who lives a few miles down the road from me. I do yard work, and I'm repainting her basement for her. I worked for her for probably about 4 years.
What's her name?
Diane Needham.
Diane Needham?
She used to be my teacher
Oh, okay.
in high school. So,
When was the last time you worked for her?
I was just there today.
Today?
Yeah.
According to Jeff, the reason that Jeff had actually left home around 1:30 that day was to plant 5 lilacs on the neighbor's side lawn before heading into work for 3 p.m. Jeff stated that he completed the work alone but was expecting that Diane be home when he stopped by. Police take note of this new information, and the tone of the interrogation then begins to change.
Jeff, see, you have no idea how your mom died or anything?
No.
Okay. Your mom was murdered. Someone killed your mom. Okay, it's not an accident. We need to get to the bottom of it. Okay? So if there's anything else that you know about that you've been holding back, that you're afraid to tell us, now's the time. Okay?
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know of anyone who would want to hurt her.
Investigators found Jeff's emotionless and delayed response to this information highly suspicious, as it is more common for a suspect to have a frantic response to finding out that their biological mother had been harmed in any way, especially if they are innocent.
Your mom was murdered. Someone killed your mom.
Officers also felt that Jeff was acting strangely non-defensive to the accusatory questions regarding his possible involvement in his mother's murder.
Did you have any altercation with your mom today?
No, not at all.
No type of fight, no type of argument, anything?
I didn't raise her. We didn't even argue today.
You say that you left at 1:30. Can anybody verify that you left at 1:30? How can we verify that?
I don't know.
Are those scratches on your forearm too?
These, yeah. I get scratched up a lot from work. This was a goat got out of the pen, and we had to catch him. And
a goat?
Yeah, we have a petting farm.
Your mom is a stay-at-home mom. From the information we've gathered, does not have a bunch of friends. She doesn't have any enemies. Why would somebody pick your home in a very short time period and harm your mom?
I don't know.
Jeff, I want to ask you a tough question here today. Okay. Did you do anything today at all to hurt your mom?
No. No.
In any way, shape, or form?
Nothing.
Did you have any arguments with your mom today?
I didn't say anything hurtful to her. I did nothing.
Finally, officers felt suspicious about the wounds found on both of Jeff's hands between the thumbs and index fingers.
What's wrong with your hands?
This was from work today. I was flipping over a pallet on my way to check the bathrooms, and as I was flipping it over, my hand got caught in there and just tore off the skin.
Can I see it? I mean, can you undo that?
Yeah, you can kind of pull it back a little bit. You can see it just rip the skin right off.
Let me see. I want to.
Yeah. So
It's painful.
It kind of stings when you push on it. I'm just trying to keep it covered up. So
Just almost, it almost looks like a blister.
It just tore the skin right off. There was like skin hanging on it, and I just like peeled it off, washed my hands, put some alcohol swab on it. So.
I mean, I've moved a lot of pallets before, and I've never where the wood grabs you might get a slip or something, but I've never had an injury from a pallet like that.
I was tossing on there, my hand got caught, and I just pulled back.
Okay, was anybody else there helping you move those pallets at all?
No, I was on my way to the bathroom.
Go ahead, you can keep telling them what.
Yeah, when you go ahead.
I just had my hands in, they have slots.
Right.
And I just put it in the space to pick it up.
Good.
And went to throw it on top there, and my hands just got caught. And I just pulled them out as quick as I could. And it just...
Did it pull the skin off of your hand?
Yeah, it tore it up. And
did it pull, all the skin that's off of your hand there, did it pull that skin off of your hand?
Yeah. And then there was some tags, and I just pulled the tags off.
Okay.
These observations set off some serious red flags, and law enforcement then became even more focused on Jeff. So, investigators did a quick examination for any other injuries on Jeff's body and found none. They then asked for his clothing and his vehicle to do further testing and sent him on his way. While the lab processed Jeff's clothing and vehicle, investigators decided to further corroborate Jeff's movements on the afternoon of the murder. And while doing so, they encountered some evidence that at first glance appeared to help Jeff.
Hey, Mrs. Liam, it's Jeffrey. I've been over to your house a few times since I thought you were coming home. I was just over there for about an hour or so, just kind of sweeping up, kind of checking things out. I was actually hoping you'd be there.
This voicemail was found in the mailbox of the neighbor, which Jeff claimed to have visited on the afternoon of the 27th. The message was left just after 2 p.m. Unfortunately for Jeff, the neighbor also spoke to the police and advised them that the lilac plants were actually planted by Jeff just 7 days earlier, on May the 20th. The neighbor also stated that they believed that this voicemail was Jeff's attempt to establish an alibi for the afternoon of May 27th. Despite the lab results showing that Jeff's clothing as well as his vehicle were both completely clean, 21-year-old Jeffrey Pyne was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of his mother, Ruth Pyne. Due to the excessive amount of circumstantial evidence combined with the lack of any physical evidence, the state employed a very talented prosecutor with a history of very difficult convictions under his belt. The prosecutor that the state employed was attorney John Skurzinski. Jeff went on to hire a defense attorney by the name of James Champion, who unfortunately had a lack of experience defending clients who were accused of murder. However, James Champion felt confident that Jeff was innocent and that the state lacked any significant evidence or ability to convict him. And so, Jeff's trial began about a year after the murder, in mid-2012.
The high school valedictorian accused of killing his own mother, the young man so popular in his hometown that the judge actually had trouble impaneling an impartial jury. ABC's John Mueller has been on this case all week. John, good morning.
Good morning, Dan. He is a beloved figure in his community, a former star athlete, student, all-around good guy. His mother had a violent, dark side. Jeffrey Pyne says he didn't kill her. His surviving family says he didn't do it. But yesterday, prosecutors began making their case.
People may proceed to opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. The crime of murder has certain ingredients, or what we call elements. And in order to prove the crime of first-degree premeditated murder, I, as the prosecutor, have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt.
The gist of the prosecution's argument was that 21-year-old Jeffrey Pyne brutally murdered his mother with a 3-foot-long 2x4 piece of wood in the garage of his lifelong family home, cracking her skull, breaking multiple fingers, and then stabbing her in the neck 16 times. Jeff then effectively cleaned his body, his clothing, and disposed of the murder weapon before heading into work and leaving Ruth's body to be discovered by his father or 10-year-old sister. Jeff then drove past Diane Needham's home and decided to call and leave a voicemail to establish an alibi before finally arriving at his workplace, Spicer Orchards. The motive for the murder was the primary focus during their opening statement.
When the police came, there was no evidence of a break-in. There was no evidence of anything going on. As a matter of fact, Ruth's husband, Bernie, took an inventory of the whole house. There was nothing gone. Her purse was wide open on the dining room table. Nothing gone. Except, you thought a 2x4 in an obscure portion of the garage was missing. Ruth was not sexually assaulted. None of the windows were broken, none of the doors. As a matter of fact, the front door was deadlocked from the inside, deadbolted. Later, when the police talked to Jeffrey Pyne, he lied. He lied about where he was. He lied about what he was doing. He lied about how he got the blisters. Now, the evidence that's presented will be that, and it'll be much more, too. There'll be much more. And like I said, it's going to be like a mosaic, a puzzle. And when that puzzle all comes in, and when you've had an opportunity to hear it all and to discuss it in the jury room and hear it arranged, you're going to see that what it forms is the picture of a man, Jeffrey Pyne, committing a first-degree premeditated murder. This was an angry, angry killing. It was the result of years and years and years of things that had built up living with a difficult person who was bipolar.
Although there was a lack of physical evidence tying the defendant to his mother's death, the prosecution would go on to use the little evidence that they had to attempt to secure a conviction. The prosecution would go on to paint a picture of a corrupt household where Ruth would abuse and assault Jeffrey on a regular basis, citing multiple instances where Ruth had physically slapped or hit Jeffrey during a subtle disagreement. They would then state that Jeff was very protective of his 10-year-old sister Julia, and that Jeff murdered Ruth as a way to protect his sister from his unstable mother's abuse. The prosecution would bring in several officers and paramedics to testify about their involvement in the case and their observations on the afternoon of May 27th. After establishing a timeline of events for the afternoon of May 27th, the prosecution then shifted its focus onto poking holes in Jeff's story. Their first move was to bring in a former friend and co-worker of Jeff's named Nicholas Breddy.
Could you state your name, please, sir, and spell your last name for the record?
Nicholas Gregory Breddy, B-R-E-T-T-I.
How old are you, sir?
20 years old.
Do you know Jeffrey Pyne?
Yes.
Is he in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you identify him, please, and tell us what he's wearing?
That is Jeff, and he's wearing a suit.
Okay. Is he sitting at the between two people there?
Yes.
Okay. Will the record indicate the witness identified the defendant, Mr. Pyne?
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
May.
How did you know Jeff Pyne?
We were friends from work.
Where do you work?
Spicer Orchards.
When did you start working there?
September 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
So I think I started working end of 2009.
When did was Jeff working there as well?
Yes.
When did he start working there?
6 to 5 years before me.
What is it?
5 to 6 years before me.
Okay. So you've known him you knew him as of May the 27th of 2011, you'd known him for 3 years?
September.
Pardon?
As of September, yes.
Okay. By the way, do you have a nickname?
Woody.
Woody, okay. Do you handle pallets and boxes often, wooden pallets and boxes?
Yes.
A lot?
Yes.
Have you ever injured your hands doing that?
I smashed my finger between a box before, yes.
Mm-hmm. You get slivers ever?
Every once in a while. Mm-hmm. Not very often.
Let me just show you. They've been marked as exhibits numbers 14, 15, proposed exhibits 14, 15, and 16. I just want to show you these and ask you if you have ever had injuries like this from lifting a pallet or working with a pallet.
No.
Ever?
No.
Would you recognize that as being an injury that you've ever seen anybody with from a pallet?
No.
Did you know whether he had a girlfriend?
Yes.
He did?
He did.
And do you know what her name is?
Holly. Holly Freeman.
Holly Freeman?
Yes.
Okay. How long had he been going with Holly?
Quite some time. A few years.
Did he ever talk to you about his feelings toward Holly?
Yes.
What did the defendant say?
He loved her.
He loved her?
Yes.
Okay. Did they ever talk about marriage or anything?
I believe they had talked about it. It never got that far.
It never got that far?
They were in the process of, she didn't want to move in yet. He wanted her to move in with him. They wanted to get their own place.
Did you ever become aware of any time where there was any kind of a problem between Holly and the defendant?
Yes.
Do you recall, was that around March of 2011?
Yes.
Perhaps one of the more damning testimonies of the trial would be the one provided by Jeff's recent ex-girlfriend, Holly Freeman.
Good morning. Good morning. Would you state your name, please, and spell your last name?
Holly Freeman, Freeman.
Do you know a person by the name of Jeffrey Pyne?
I do.
Is he in the courtroom today?
Yes, he's sitting right there.
We'll stipulate to an ID, Your Honor.
I'll accept the stipulation.
Record may reflect the stip.
How do you know Mr. Pyne?
He was my boyfriend.
And when did you start, the two of you start a relationship?
Fall of 2008.
Okay. When you began your relationship, I mean, can you describe the relationship? Help us to understand what kind of a relationship you had with him.
We were exclusive. It was a serious relationship.
When you say serious, what do you mean?
Well, after we had been together for almost 2 years, and, you know, we had talked about marriage and kids.
Yeah, marriage and kids?
Yes.
Are the two of you involved in a relationship any longer?
No.
Okay. I want to point out to you the time of year of about March of 2011. Do you recall that period of time?
Yes.
Okay. Sort of maybe the end of March of 2011? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Can you tell the jury what happened at that time?
I'm sorry, Jeff had told me sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs.
Jeff had told me...
Would you like some water? Do you need water?
I'm fine.
Okay.
He had told me that he was going to Grand Rapids with his boss at the time. Well, he had cheated on me.
All right.
Objection, Your Honor. That just bootstrapped it back to the same question.
I'm sorry. What's the objection?
The objection is relevance and character.
Overruled.
Thank you. He had cheated on you.
Yes.
Did your attitude toward him change?
Yes.
And how so?
Everyone was.
Well, I'm just asking you for yours.
I'm sorry. I was completely thrown off.
In what way?
Because Jeff, to me, Jeff was the perfect guy, the perfect son, the perfect boyfriend. And that was the first time ever that I had ever had a reason to doubt him. I trusted him wholeheartedly. I never had a reason not to. And that was the first time that I couldn't, or felt that I couldn't anymore.
And that was as a result of his cheating?
Yes.
And any other particular aspect of that caused you to feel like that you didn't know him or you couldn't trust him? Or that, I'm sorry, that you doubted him?
Because he lied so effortlessly to me, to my family, to my friends. He had a whole elaborate story to cover his tracks, and the fact that he could just look into my face and my mom's face and everybody. And I know that some people may think that that's not a big deal, that guys cheat on their girlfriends all the time, but if you knew Jeff and you knew his character and what a good person he was, you couldn't even fathom the fact that he could do something like that. And nobody could.
All right. And this was the first time you'd seen anything like that?
Ever.
And that altered the relationship?
Yes.
Okay. After that, what happened to your relationship?
I didn't speak to him for close to a month.
Okay. I want to point out now the date of May the 27th of 2011. You recall that date?
Yes.
Did you have any contact with Mr. Pyne that day?
He texted me at 11. It was either 11:40 or 11:50 a.m. and it said, "I love you."
That was it?
Yes.
Okay. Between 11:40 and 11:50 a.m. on Friday, May 27th?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any other or do you have any other contact with him on that day?
Not until the night. Technically, it would have been the morning of the 28th.
May the 28th?
Yes.
And about what time?
2:30 in the morning.
And what was that?
I had gotten a phone call from an unknown number, and it was Jeff on his aunt's phone.
He was calling from his aunt's house?
Yes. I don't know if he was, yes, he told me he was at her house.
What did he tell you?
He said, I just want you to know that I'm okay, and Julia's okay, and my dad's okay. And I said, okay. And he said, my mom is dead.
He just said it like that?
Just like that.
He said, I'm okay, Julia's okay, my dad's okay, my mom is dead?
Well, he paused, and he said, my mom is dead.
Just in that way?
Just in that way.
And for the record, can you describe, the way he said that? Can you characterize it? Did he use any expression?
He was not crying. He was calm.
Holly's testimony, though biased due to a recent breakup, was likely an effective move for the prosecution. Prosecutors would then follow Holly's testimony by having Jeff's neighbor Diane Needham testify regarding Jeff's alibi, and more specifically the voicemail that Jeff had left on her answering machine. Despite describing Jeff as a respectful and responsible young man, Diane would also reiterate her previous claims, stating that the 5 lilacs that Jeff claimed to plant on the 27th were in fact planted just 7 days before, on May the 20th, and that she felt that his voicemail was likely an attempt to cover his tracks. The prosecution finished up their round of testimonies by bringing in 2 experts to speak about the injuries found on Ruth's body, as well as the injuries found on Jeff's hands.
Good afternoon, Doctor. Would you state your name, please, and spell your last name?
Ruben Ortiz Reyes.
What is your occupation, sir?
I am a forensic pathologist.
All right. You also are a medical doctor?
Yes.
Dr. Reyes would go on to explain the amount of injuries on Ruth's body and the location of each injury. He would explain that a 2x4 piece of wood would accurately match the injuries he observed, and he would break down the way that he believed Ruth was stricken during each injury. When asked what he believed the injuries could explain about the attacker, Dr. Reyes pointed out that he believed that Ruth was a victim of an emotional attack, due to the injuries being consistent with something known as overkilling. Basically, nearly every injury found on Ruth's body was a defensive wound, and the 17 stabs were excessive since the blunt force trauma would have likely caused death or coma on its own. The second expert was a medical examiner by the name of Lubisha Dragovic. Dr. Dragovic would go on to explain that the wounds found on Jeff's hands were entirely inconsistent with the story as told by Jeff. He would state that the size of the wounds and appearance of the wounds totally match with something known as a rope burn. Simply put, the wounds on Jeff's hands appeared to be from large blisters that had been picked open. Based on the symmetry of the wounds, Dr. Dragovic believed that these wounds happened simultaneously and likely from the same object, either being dragged or slipping between both hands repeatedly, while Jeff applied pressure, likely by squeezing. The defense went on to cross-examine several of the prosecution's witnesses, but not all, and the defense made the risky decision to refrain from calling a single person to testify. This is due to the fact that nearly all of the evidence and testimony provided by the prosecution was very circumstantial. There wasn't a single piece of physical evidence that directly linked Jeff to the crime, as there was no blood found on his clothing, no blood found in his car, a complete lack of a murder weapon, and no witness or recording of the crime. Defense attorney James Champion felt incredibly confident that the jury would see that Jeff was a respectful young man with no criminal history at all, and that the accusations being made were outlandish. James Champion felt certain that the jury would be unable to convict Jeff based on the overwhelming amount of reasonable doubt. Both attorneys closed out the trial by reiterating the case, and just before the jury would be sent to deliberation, prosecutor John Skurzinski filed one last motion. He proposed that the option for a verdict of second-degree murder be available for the jury in case they believed that Jeff committed the crime without any premeditation. The defense fought adamantly against this, as James Champion was afraid that the jury may choose this newly added option as a medium between both extremes. After just 3 days of deliberation, in December of 2012, the jury came back with a verdict.
Your Honor, now calling in the matter of the People versus Jeffrey Pyne, case number 2011-238-692-FC.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is John Spinsky, the prosecutor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Michael Getzpinger on behalf of the people.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James Champion on behalf of the defendant, Jeffrey Pyne.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. As I indicated this morning, the court received a note from the jury that indicated we have reached a verdict, and the court has possession of the jury's verdict in the sealed envelope. I'm going to be bringing the jury in momentarily and taking its verdict. Mr. Pyne, sir, I'm going to ask that you please stand. Provide the jury foreperson with the verdict. As the foreperson for the jury in this case, I'd ask that you publish the verdict of the jury as reached in the case of People versus Jeffrey Pyne.
Okay. In the People of the State of Michigan versus Jeffrey Pyne, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder.
Would you like the jury polled, Mr. Champion?
I would, Your Honor.
This court sentences the defendant to 20 years to 60 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections. He gets credit for 476 days. He is ordered to pay the crime victim rights fee of $130. He is assessed state cost of $68. It is also ordered that the defendant shall comply with DNA testing as an additional condition of his sentence. That is the sentence of this court.
I'd like to say that there's been no measure of justice served for my wife, for my son, or for my family. There's no evidence tying my son to this crime, and there's a good reason for that. He didn't do it.
And he maintains he's innocent.
He is innocent. People who are innocent don't say they're guilty. I want to say this, that he was convicted on a story that was based on hunches and speculation. Somewhere in the mix, the presumption of innocence and the definition of reasonable doubt was lost. I can't explain that. I know that I know my son is a tender heart, and I'm telling you right now, he did not commit this crime. His mother's illness made him an easy target.
Jeffrey's family still stand behind his innocence to this day and have formed a relatively large community of supporters. Jeffrey Pyne currently resides at the Ionia Correctional Facility in Ionia, Michigan.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Dear Judge Bowman, I'm going to read my daughters first. My name is Julia Pyne. I am 12 years old, and I am a victim of this crime. I miss my mom, Ruth, very much. My brother Jeffrey and I are very close, and I miss him very much as well. He is a great big brother, and I ask you to send him home very soon to me and my dad because we love him very much.